High Commander Vexthar stood before the massive holographic display, his scaled fingers dancing through the projection of Earth's solar system. His silver-plated armor reflected the blue glow of the planet below, a world he had already mentally claimed as his 33rd conquest. Behind him, the bridge crew of the flagship Inevitable Victory maintained a respectful silence as their leader studied their next target. Primitive nuclear deterrence, he muttered, zooming in on various military installations. Ballistic missiles, projectile weapons. Each observation was punctuated with a dismissive flick of his auxiliary tentacles. Have they even achieved basic quantum shielding? First Officer Calorex approached with careful deference. No, Commander. Their most advanced defensive systems appear to be based on interceptor technology, nothing that could challenge our fleet's capabilities. The massive view screen showed their armada, 50 warships arranged in perfect attack formation, their chrome hulls gleaming like predatory daggers against the backdrop of space. Each vessel was equipped with weapons that could reduce a city to ash in seconds. They had conquered worlds with defensive systems far more advanced than Earth's. Begin standard invasion protocol, Vexthar ordered, his voice carrying the bored tone of routine. Tactical, display their primary military assets. The hologram shifted, highlighting bases, aircraft carriers, and missile installations around the globe. The Krethak's four eyes narrowed as he processed the information. Something about the data bothered him, but he dismissed the feeling. Their intelligence was thorough, their technology superior. What could possibly go wrong? Sir, his intelligence officer interrupted. I'm detecting some anomalies in the population centers. Many of their civilians appear to have military training. Vexthar waved away the concern. All species have their warriors. It matters little against our technology. Prepare the first wave. The invasion fleet split into predetermined groups, taking position over major cities across the planet. Their arrival cast massive shadows over urban centers, their presence designed to inspire terror and submission. On the streets below, millions of humans looked up at the apparent end of their world. But among them were those who saw something different. In a small apartment in Seattle, former Marine Captain Ashley Thompson wasn't watching the ships with fear. Her trained eye noted their formation, their positioning, their apparent weapon systems. Her hands didn't shake as she reached for her phone. They hadn't shaken under fire in Fallujah, and they wouldn't shake now. Marcus, she said when the call connected. Are you seeing this? Already on it. Ash. Former SEAL team leader Marcus Rodriguez replied from San Diego. They're using a standard containment formation, just like we used to do with coastal cities. Except they're expecting us to panic. Ashley noted, already pulling out her old tactical gear. They don't know about people like us, do they? No, Marcus answered, and she could hear the grim smile in his voice. They have no idea what they're walking into. Above them, High Commander Vexthar issued the final preparation orders. His species had never lost a conquest, and he saw no reason this one would be different. The preliminary scans showed no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no quantum technology. Just another primitive world ready to fall. In his arrogance, he failed to notice what his intelligence officer had tried to warn him about. He saw the weapons, the vehicles, the bases, but he missed the most dangerous asset Earth possessed. He missed the millions of men and women who had faced death before, who had learned warfare in the harshest conditions imaginable, who had turned combat into an art form. The Krethak were about to learn that technology alone doesn't make a warrior, and Earth's warriors had been forged in fires far hotter than anything the aliens could imagine. The invasion was about to begin, but it wouldn't go according to plan. Ashley Thompson's apartment had become a command center within hours. Her dining room table, once reserved for quiet morning coffee, now held 3 laptops and a scratched tablet she'd carried through 2 tours. The wall-mounted TV silently displayed news coverage of the alien ships, while her military radio crackled with encrypted transmissions. Grid pattern, she muttered, marking positions on a digital map. They're treating our cities like we used to treat insurgent zones. Basic containment strategy. Her fingers, calloused from years of handling weapons, traced potential breach points. The phone rang again. Marcus Rodriguez, patch time. Ash, I've got confirmation from Fort Bragg. Our old networks are lighting up like Christmas. Same here, she replied, adding another marker to her map. I'm tracking responses from at least 30 combat vets in Seattle alone. How's the SEAL team response? Better than expected. Remember Johnson from Team 6. He's already coordinating with 3 other teams. These aliens don't know it yet, but they just kicked a hornet's nest of special operations veterans. A notification pinged on her laptop. Secure message from Mike Hawkins, former Army Ranger she'd served with in Kandahar. Asterisk. They're using predictable landing zones, just like we used to call for extract. No variance, no tactical adjustment. They're raw. Asterisk. Ashley smiled grimly. The aliens' tactics screamed of enforce unused to real resistance. Their ships held perfect formations. Their landing zones were textbook examples of what she'd expect from someone who'd only studied warfare in simulations. Marcus, she said, switching channels on her radio, patch me into the main frequency. It's time we got everyone on the same page. The radio crackled as veterans across the country joined the encrypted channel. Names and locations poured in. Former Marines in Chicago, retired Delta Force operators in Atlanta, Army Rangers in Denver. Each voice carried the steady calm that only came from experience under fire. Listen up. Ashley broadcast, her command voice falling into place like she'd never left the course. We're seeing standard containment patterns across all major cities. These bogies are running this like a textbook operation, which means they've never faced anything like us. Got that right, came a gruff voice. Jack O'Neill, former Green Beret. Their ground troops are deploying in perfect columns. No cover, no concealment. They're begging to be picked apart. They're expecting civilians, Marcus added. They're not ready for people who've spent careers studying how to break exactly this kind of operation. Ashley pulled up satellite imagery showing alien troop movements. Their formations were flawless, too flawless. They moved like an army that had never faced serious resistance, never had to adapt to an enemy that fought back effectively. Here's what we know, she continued, her voice steady. They have superior technology, but their tactics show no sign of actual combat experience. They're treating this like every other world they've conquered. But Earth isn't like other worlds. The radio filled with sounds of agreement. These were men and women who had fought in the worst conditions imaginable. They'd learned warfare not from simulations but from blood and sweat and hard-won victory. We're going to show them what real combat veterans can do, Ashley declared. Marcus, coordinate with the West Coast teams. Jack, get your mountain warfare experts ready. They want to play by their rulebook. Fine. We'll show them why Earth's veterans wrote our own. As the aliens continued their methodical deployment, they remained unaware of the network forming beneath them. In apartments, houses, and bases across the country, combat veterans were doing what they did best, preparing for battle. Their weapons might be primitive compared to alien technology, but their experience was about to prove far more valuable than any advanced shield system. The Krathak had made a critical error. They had assumed Earth's military capability could be measured in weapons and technology alone. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon was the battle-hardened wisdom of its veterans. And those veterans were ready to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. Jack O'Neill crouched behind a demolished parking barrier, his experienced eyes studying the alien patrol through a pair of high-powered binoculars. 20 years of Special Forces operations had taught him the value of patience. Beside him, his spotter, former Army intelligence officer Sarah Martinez, took careful notes on a weatherproof tablet. Notice the shimmer around their armor, he whispered. Energy shields, but they're treating them like they're invincible. Sarah nodded, adding another observation to her growing list. Classic over-reliance on superior tech, just like those Soviet tanks in Afghanistan. All that armor meant nothing in the right terrain. The aliens moved with mechanical precision through Seattle's streets, their weapons held high, shields glowing. They never checked corners, never maintained proper spacing. Every step screamed of inexperience in real ground combat. Jack's radio crackled softly. "Ghost 2, this is Ash. What's your assessment?" "These boys have never fought a real ground war," he replied, watching another patrol pass. "They're broadcasting their positions like amateurs. Martinez says their shield frequency is consistent. No randomization, no adaptation. Confirmed here in San Diego." Marcus cut in. "Their command and control is centralized. Just intercepted some transmissions. They're reporting every minor decision up the chain." Ashley's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. "Good. That's their first weakness. They've never faced an enemy that could think independently." The observation teams continued their work across the country, each veteran adding their expertise to the growing pool of intelligence. In Denver, Vietnam veterans noted how the aliens bunched up in urban areas, creating perfect ambush zones. Former Iraq war soldiers identified vulnerabilities in their patrol routes. Sarah's tablet pinged, new data from a former EOD team in Chicago. "Jack, look at this. They're shields. They're calibrated for energy weapons. Old-school kinetic impacts might be their Achilles heel. Like punching a boxer who only trains to block kicks." Jack mused, a plan forming. They've never considered someone might throw a rock instead of a laser beam. The radio channels buzzed with similar discoveries. Each veteran group added their unique perspective, decades of combined combat experience creating a comprehensive picture of their adversaries' weaknesses. In her makeshift command center, Ashley compiled the reports. The aliens' technological superiority had made them complacent. They had no concept of camouflage, no understanding of cover and concealment. Their tactics were those of an army that had never faced a determined, experienced enemy. "Listen up, everyone," she broadcast. "We're seeing the same patterns across all cities. They're treating this like a peacekeeping operation, not a war. Time to show them the difference." Marcus's team reported in from San Diego. Their command vehicles are distinctive. Extra antennas, heavier shields, but they're parking them in predictable locations, just like we used to before we learned better in Fallujah. "Their troops bunch up when they take fire," reported a veteran team from Chicago. "No dispersion, no individual initiative. They're fighting like they've only ever done simulations." Jack watched another patrol pass, their formation perfect and utterly vulnerable. "Ash, we're not just fighting aliens here. We're fighting the military equivalent of trust fund kids who've never been in a real fight." The observation continued through the day, each hour bringing new insights. The aliens had superior weapons, impenetrable shields, and advanced technology. But Earth's veterans had something far more valuable. They had experience. Real, hard-won, blood and dirt experience. "All teams, consolidate your data," Ashley ordered as dusk approached. "Tomorrow, we show them why experience matters more than technology." Across the country, combat veterans prepared for battle, their minds already adapting decades of warfare knowledge to this new enemy. The aliens might have conquered 32 worlds, but they had never faced an enemy like this, an enemy that had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. The Krathak were about to learn that their greatest weakness wasn't in their technology, but in their inexperience. And experience was something Earth's veterans had in abundance. Los Angeles burned under the alien ships, but Nathan Ghost Walker smiled as he watched the Krathak patrol march past his position. 20 years in Force Recon had taught him one thing: the more powerful the enemy thought they were, the harder they fell. "Roneo team, check in," he whispered into his throat mic. 5 clicks responded. His team of veterans was in position. Former Marines, Rangers, and 2 retired Delta operators, all spread through the concrete canyon of downtown LA. "They're still following the same patrol route," came Martinez's voice over the secure channel. "5th time today. No variation." Ghost checked his watch. The aliens had become predictable, like clockwork. Their arrogance had turned into a weapon against them. All teams, execute on my mark. His voice was steady, calm. The same voice that had commanded men through the worst fights in Fallujah. Remember, conventional weapons on their shields first. Make them feel invincible. The patrol rounded the corner, their chrome armor gleaming in the morning sun. 12 aliens, walking in perfect formation, energy weapons held high. They looked like something out of a sci-fi movie, until the first shots rang out. Standard NATO rounds pinged off their shields, exactly as expected. The aliens bunched up, just as they had in every previous encounter. Their commander barked orders in their clicking language, shields glowing brighter. They're calling for backup, Martins reported. Standard response pattern. Ghost's smile widened. Now. From the sewers beneath the alien patrol, shake charges detonated. Not to kill, just to destabilize. The aliens' perfect formation shattered as the street buckled beneath them. Their shields, calibrated for energy weapons and bullets, did nothing against the physics of suddenly unstable ground. Phase 2, Ghost commanded. The veterans emerged from their hiding spots, not with rifles, but with equipment the aliens had dismissed as primitive. Combat sledgehammers, tools that Earth's warriors had used since the dawn of time. The alien shields, designed to stop high-velocity impacts, couldn't properly calculate the slow, devastating force of a veteran warrior's swing. The first alien went down screaming, its shield sparking uselessly against the brutal simplicity of kinetic force. The others tried to regroup, but years of relying on technology had left them unprepared for close-quarter combat. They don't know how to fight hand-to-hand, Ghost observed, driving his combat knife into a gap in alien armor he'd identified during previous observations. Never had to learn. The battle was brutally short. The aliens' advanced weapons proved useless in close quarters. Their perfect formation dissolved into chaos. When their commander called for retreat, they didn't even maintain proper coverage, rookies running from their first real fight. "Command, this is Ghost," he reported, watching the survivors flee. "First strike successful. Moving to Phase 2. Ashley's voice crackled over the radio. "Confirmed, Ghost." Similar reports coming in from Chicago and Houston. They're responding exactly as predicted. The veterans moved quickly, gathering alien weapons and tech before melting back into the urban terrain. They'd learned in a dozen wars how to disappear into a city's fabric. They're already launching gunships, Martins reported from her observation post. Standard search pattern, just like yesterday. Ghost watched the sleek alien craft sweep overhead, their sensors searching for targets that had already vanished. His team had already disappeared into the network of maintenance tunnels and subway systems that honeycomb every major city, paths known to every urban combat veteran. "Let them search," he replied. "They're looking for an army. They don't understand they're fighting shadows." The first strike had proven what Earth's veterans had suspected. For all their technology, the Krathak were inexperienced warriors. They had never faced an enemy that could adapt, that could turn their own strength against them. As Ghost's team regrouped in their underground command post, reports flowed in from across the country. Every strike team reported success. The aliens' perfect formations had shattered against the improvisational warfare of Earth's combat veterans. The real war was just beginning, and humanity's greatest warriors were just warming up. Diana Blackwood stood on the roof of the abandoned Chicago skyscraper, watching alien gunships screaming overhead in an increasingly frantic search pattern. 20 years as an Air Force colonel had taught her to read enemy air tactics, and what she saw made her smile. "They're getting sloppy," she reported into her encrypted comm. "Flying lower, faster. They're frustrated." "Same in all sectors," Ashley's voice crackled back. "Their command structure's starting to crack. They don't know how to handle an enemy that keeps adapting." The aliens had switched tactics 3 times in the past 12 hours. First, they'd tried flooding the streets with troops. That had ended in disaster when Kevin Mack MacArthur's Green Beret teams introduced them to the art of urban ambush warfare. Then they'd attempted high-altitude bombardment, only to find their targets had disappeared into underground networks mapped by generations of city planners and combat engineers. Incoming transmission from Dallas. Martinez cut in. The Rangers just field-tested the modified EMP charges. Alien shields have no defense against localized magnetic pulses. Diana watched another gunship pass, its search pattern increasingly erratic. They keep making the same mistake. They adapt their technology, but not their tactics. Below in the city streets, veterans from 5 different wars were teaching the aliens painful lessons about human ingenuity. Vietnam vets had turned the city's maintenance tunnels into death traps. Iraq War veterans had adapted their IED detection skills to identify alien patrol routes. Afghan War veterans were demonstrating why their experience in mountain warfare translated perfectly to urban combat among skyscrapers. "Command, this is Mac," the radio crackled. "We just knocked out their 3rd command post. They're still clustering their leadership, still no signs of tactical dispersion." Diana keyed her comm. "All units, prepare for their counterattack. Remember Kandahar. They'll try to overwhelm us with superior firepower." Right on cue, massive troop carriers appeared on the horizon. The aliens were done playing games. But Earth's veterans had seen this before, the desperate escalation of a force that was losing control. "They're deploying their elite units," Ashley observed over the command channel. "But watch their formation. Still perfect, still predictable." Diana's teams had spent hours preparing for this moment. The aliens would expect them to retreat from overwhelming force. That's what every other world had done. Instead, they were about to face warriors who had spent careers learning how to fight against superior numbers and technology. "Ghost Team, you're up," Diana ordered. Nathan's voice was cool and professional. "Already in position. These boys are about to learn why you don't bunch up your elites in urban terrain." The alien elite units moved through the streets like a chrome tide, their advanced armor gleaming. They moved with the confidence of warriors who had never lost a battle. That confidence lasted exactly 3 minutes. The first sign that something was wrong came when their communications suddenly died, courtesy of techniques perfected against insurgent networks. Then the veterans struck from all sides, using tools and tactics the aliens had dismissed as primitive. "They're breaking formation," Ghost reported, the sounds of combat in the background. "These elite troops have never faced a real counterattack. They don't know how to regroup under fire." Diana watched from her perch as the carefully coordinated attack unfolded. Decades of human military experience, from World War II to modern conflicts, were being unleashed on an enemy that had never faced a true resistance. "All units, press the advantage," she ordered. "Show them what Earth's veterans can do." The aliens' elite forces, trained for straightforward combat against technologically similar foes, found themselves facing an enemy that fought like shadows. Veterans who had learned their trade in the harshest conditions imaginable now turned those lessons against an overconfident foe. As the battle raged below, Diana couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The aliens had superior technology, but Earth's veterans had something far more valuable. They had the accumulated wisdom of centuries of warfare, passed down through generations of warriors who had learned their lessons in blood and victory. The Krathak were about to learn why experience would always trump technology. High Commander Vexthar's tentacles trembled with barely suppressed rage as he watched another tactical display go dark. In the past 24 hours, he'd lost contact with 13 command posts. His elite units were reporting casualties at unprecedented rates. "Impossible," he hissed, smashing a scaled fist into his command console. "They are primitives. How are they doing this?" The doors to his command chamber slid open as First Officer Calrex entered, his usual composure shattered. "Commander, we've lost contact with Sector 7. The humans, they're not fighting like any species we encountered." Meanwhile, in Seattle, Michael Hayes and his Delta Force team were demonstrating exactly why Earth's veterans were different. They moved through the captured alien command post with practiced efficiency, decades of special operations experience evident in every movement. Assets secured, Hayes reported, his voice steady as he accessed the alien computer systems. Martinez, the encryption patterns match what you predicted. They never expected anyone to actually breach their command centers. Of course they didn't. Sarah Martinez replied over comms, her fingers flying across her keyboard as she processed the stolen data. Their entire military doctrine is built on technological superiority. They've never had to develop proper operational security. Above the city, another alien warship tilted oddly in the sky, its crew struggling with combat stress that their species had never evolved to handle. The Krethak, used to quick surrenders and easy victories, were experiencing something entirely new: fear. Their neural patterns are fascinating, Martinez commented, analyzing the biological data from captured alien soldiers. They literally don't have the psychological adaptations for prolonged combat stress. Their species never developed them. In his flagship, Vexthar received another desperate transmission. Commander, the humans. They're everywhere and nowhere. They strike without warning, disappear before we can respond. Our troops they're starting to refuse orders. Refuse orders. Vexthar's secondary hearts nearly stopped. Impossible. We are the Krethak. We have never lost. That's their weakness. Ashley's voice cut across all veteran command channels, coordinating the global response. They've never lost, so they never learned from failure. But that's all we did. Learn, adapt, improve. The evidence was becoming undeniable. Alien troops, bred for victory and trained in simulators, were cracking under the psychological pressure of facing an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. Veterans of a dozen Earth wars had become their worst nightmare, an enemy that understood them better than they understood themselves. "Sir," Calrex reported, his voice shaking, "the humans, they're using our own weapons against us. Somehow they've learned to bypass our genetic locks. They're adapting our technology faster than we can adjust our protocols." Michael Hayes smiled as his team demonstrated exactly that, using captured alien plasma rifles with modifications inspired by years of weapons training. "Amazing what you can do when you've spent a career learning to use whatever weapons are available," he commented, adjusting the power settings based on experience rather than formal training. The breaking point came when Vexthar received the casualty reports from their latest offensive. His elite units, the pride of the Krethak military, had been systematically dismantled by what appeared to be small teams of human veterans using impossibly primitive tactics. How? He demanded of his tactical officers. How are they becoming more effective as the battle continues? Every other species becomes less coordinated under pressure. The answer, of course, was something the Krethak couldn't comprehend. Earth's veterans weren't just fighting. They were doing what they'd always done: adapting, learning, teaching each other new tactics in real time, sharing centuries of combined combat experience. "All teams maintain pressure," Ashley ordered across the secure channels. "They're starting to break. Show them what real combat experience looks like." As another alien command post fell to veteran tactics, Vexthar faced a terrifying realization. His species had conquered 32 worlds through technological superiority, but they'd never faced warriors like this, warriors who had spent their entire lives learning to overcome superior forces. The Krethak were about to learn that true military power wasn't measured in technology, but in the battle-hardened wisdom of those who had faced death and emerged stronger. General William Iron Bill Davidson stood in the makeshift war room deep beneath the Pentagon, surrounded by screens showing real-time battle data from across the globe. After 40 years of military service, he was about to coordinate the largest counter-offensive in human history. "All combat teams, this is Iron Bill. Operation Payback is now active. Show these aliens why Earth's veterans don't play by anyone's rules but our own." The response was immediate and devastating. In New York, Former Navy SEALs emerged from the East River wearing salvaged alien armor, their underwater demolition experience proving lethal against ships that had never considered aquatic attacks. The aliens' water detection systems, calibrated for their own technology, failed to register the primitive but effective approach. Target Alpha neutralize, Marcus reported from San Diego. Their Pacific Command hub never saw us coming. Who knew SEAL team tactics would work even better against aliens? In the Rockies, Afghan war veterans led by Kevin Mac MacArthur turned the mountains into a nightmare for alien pursuit craft. Their experience fighting in high-altitude conditions proved invaluable against enemies who'd never dealt with terrain-based warfare. They still don't get it, Mac's voice crackled over the comm. They keep trying to use the same approach that failed in the cities. These boys never learn to adapt to the environment. Ashley's voice cut in from Seattle. All teams be advised. We've cracked their central command protocols. Martinez's team confirmed they're still using a standardized encryption. They never expected anyone to capture and analyze their tech. Iron Bill smiled grimly. The aliens had made the ultimate military mistake, underestimating their enemy's ability to learn and adapt. Earth's veterans hadn't just studied the alien technology. They'd improved it based on real combat experience. Denver team, you have a go, he ordered. Show them what happens when you combine alien tech with human ingenuity. The response came from Jack O'Neill. Roger that. These plasma rifles work a lot better when you modify them based on actual combat experience instead of simulator training. Across the globe, the counteroffensive unfolded with devastating efficiency. Vietnam veterans turned urban centers into deadly mazes, using techniques perfected in decades-old conflicts that the aliens had never encountered. Iraq war veterans demonstrated why their experience in desert warfare translated perfectly to any environment, where visibility and coordination were key. Sir, Martins reported, their fleet formations are breaking down. They're losing coordinated control. Their command structure can't handle decentralized warfare. The aliens had never faced an enemy that could fight effectively without constant orders from above. They couldn't comprehend how small teams of veterans could operate independently, coordinating complex attacks without direct supervision. They're pulling back from major cities, Diana reported from her air tactical position. Their flight patterns are chaotic. No discipline, no coherent strategy. They're starting to panic. Iron Bill keyed his global command channel. All units, execute Phase 3. Don't let them regroup. Show them why Earth's veterans are the deadliest fighters in the galaxy. The response was overwhelming. In every theater of combat, veterans applied generations of hard-won knowledge against an enemy that had never needed to adapt. Former tank commanders repurposed alien vehicles with techniques learned in mechanized warfare. Special Forces teams demonstrated infiltration tactics that no simulator could have predicted. Their flagship is attempting emergency protocols, Martinez announced, monitoring the alien communications. They're calling for immediate extraction of all forces. Sir, they're retreating. The war room erupted in controlled celebration, but Iron Bill maintained his focus. All units, maintain pressure. Don't let them establish stable withdrawal corridors. Make sure they remember why they lost. As the alien fleet began its chaotic withdrawal from Earth's atmosphere, the truth became clear. The Krathak had fallen victim to their own success. They had conquered so easily for so long that they'd never developed the skills that Earth's veterans had earned through centuries of conflict. Send final message to all commands, Iron Bill ordered. Earth's veterans send their regards. Let the galaxy know. We're not just soldiers. We're the products of every hard lesson warfare has ever taught. And we're always ready to teach those lessons to anyone who threatens our home. The greatest military power in known space had just learned why experience would always trump technology. Earth's veterans had written a new chapter in galactic history, with tactics learned in humanity's own wars. High Commander Vexthar stood before the Galactic Council, his once pristine armor bearing scars from Earth's defense. The Grand Chamber, filled with representatives from 100 spacefaring civilizations, fell silent as he began his report. "We were wrong," he stated, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance. "The humans, they are not what we thought. They are not primitives. They are warrior scholars, keepers of combat wisdom that spans centuries." The chamber's holographic displays showed footage from the failed invasion. Earth's veterans in action, turning seemingly primitive tools and tactics into devastating weapons against superior technology. The council members watched in stunned silence as human fighters demonstrated techniques that defied conventional military doctrine. In a secure conference room back on Earth, Ashley Thompson and her fellow veteran commanders watched the transmission with quiet satisfaction. The alien broadcast networks had been easy to decrypt, another example of the Krethak's over-reliance on technological superiority. "They still don't fully understand," Marcus commented, watching Vexthar's testimony. "They think it was about the tactics, the techniques. They don't get that it was about the experience itself." "How could they?" Ashley replied. "They've never had to learn from failure, never had to adapt or die, never had to pass down lessons written in blood and victory." The council chamber erupted in discussion as Vexthar played footage of Michael Hayes' team capturing an alien command post. The footage showed veterans using everything from modern combat techniques to tactics developed in ancient wars, seamlessly blending centuries of military knowledge into an unstoppable force. "They're veterans," Vexthar continued. "They are not merely soldiers. Each one carries the accumulated wisdom of countless battles. They learn from every conflict, adapt to every situation. They turned our own technology against us in ways our simulators never predicted." Sarah Martinez's voice came over the secure channel. "They're broadcasting this across the galaxy. Every spacefaring race is watching. The implications for Earth's future are exactly what we wanted," Iron Bill finished. "Let them see. Let them understand." In the council chamber, a representative from the Orion Confederation rose to speak. "These humans, they defeated the Krethak not with superior technology, but with superior experience, with knowledge passed down through generations of warriors. More than that," Vexthar replied. "They fight differently. Every defeat makes them stronger. Every challenge teaches them new lessons. Their veterans don't just fight wars. They study them, understand them, master them." The footage showed Ghost's team in Los Angeles, using combat techniques refined in a dozen Earth wars to systematically dismantle alien elite units. The council members watched as human veterans demonstrated why experience would always trump raw power. "We recommend," Vexthar concluded, "that Earth be classified as a protected combat evolution zone. They're veterans. They are too valuable to risk losing. The galaxy needs their wisdom." Back on Earth, in veteran halls and makeshift command centers, warriors from every conflict of the past century shared quiet smiles. They had done more than defend their home. They had shown the galaxy why human combat experience was unique in the known universe. All those wars, Ashley mused, watching the council's deliberations. All that pain and sacrifice. Who would have thought it would end up saving not just humanity, but maybe the galaxy itself? The council's decision was unanimous. Earth would be protected, its veteran warriors recognized as living repositories of combat wisdom. The Krethak's failure had opened the galaxy's eyes to something they had never considered, that true military power lay not in technology, but in the battle-hardened wisdom of those who had faced war and emerged stronger. "What now?" Marcus asked as the transmission ended. Ashley smiled, thinking of all the veterans who had turned Earth's history of conflict into its greatest defense. "Now we do what we've always done. We learn. We teach. We make sure the next generation of warriors is even better prepared than we were." As the sun set on a free Earth, its veterans had given the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. Never underestimate those who have learned their lessons in the crucible of combat. For on Earth, every veteran was not just a warrior, but a keeper of wisdom that had just saved humanity from the stars themselves.